Marc, what do you think? Should we kick it off in a minute?
Yeah, let's give it a go. I mean, we can quickly maybe just start with like where we currently stand as a project, where we are headed, and keep basically the interesting demos for the later point in the call when everyone figured out the right Google Meet link, I guess. That way we can just give it a go. First of all, like, thanks everyone for joining. It's been like a really amazing year for us since we started Langfuse last year. As the three of us, Clemens, Max, and me, were NYC, we're building like more complex agents for web scraping, for code generation. Just realized like there's such a big need for new software here. And yeah, we've come a long way with this project. We are super excited about everything you built and like all the conversations we're having to really build like the best kind of suite in this market. But yeah, more on like our vision and roadmap later. Maybe quickly how we want to do this town hall. Like, we're experimenting. Very much looking forward to your feedback. We just want to chat more with all of you. And like, first of all, we'd like to give you like a brief intro, then have a look at like where we are headed with like Langfuse 2.0. Like, as we are semantically versioning Langfuse across the different packages, this 2.0 has like nothing to do with the version numbers, to be honest. But yeah, we just feel like there's like a big change in the product focus. And then also there's an outlook to 3.0, which might be more related to the semantic version numbers as we prepare for some infrastructure changes. And then, like, I mean, it's launch week. We've worked on tons of new features over the last weeks. And yeah, we already launched a couple of them this week. And two more like bigger ones are coming. And we'll give you a sneak peek into a demo. And then we just wanted to do like Q&A, chat with everyone. Like, what are you most interested in? What's your biggest feedback? What do you really want to change about this project? And yeah, just try to make this like as interactive as possible. And then like let's agree on like how we can maybe do this on like a more regular schedule, or what's really like useful, interesting for everyone. Yeah, these are like our thoughts. If you ever have something where you feel like, hey, let's just talk about this, just put it in the chat. And we'll try to make use of like the Pulse feature and the Q&A box, because we saw the guys from Supabase like using especially the Q&A really like usefully by just like putting things in Q&A and then like going through them to really touch on tons of topics in a really short time, which was super valuable. Cool. Clemens, shall we give it a go? Cool. So yeah, Max, Clemens, and me were the three founders originally when we started NYC building these like LLM agents, and then realized, oh, we are trying to solve things with Datadog and Mixpanel that aren't like the right solutions for this. And since we launched on Hacker News and Product Hunt last summer, we're like super excited to got like to our initial traction with observability pieces, and now basically almost 1 year later now, really excited to extend the feature set, because everything in the end hooks into these LLM traces. Because like evaluating a RAG application or benchmarking it without a trace of understanding, for example, what RAG context was pulled in, it's not really possible. So we just feel like all the like difficult pieces are solved with the project right now. Like, there are some bugs here and there, and we try to fix all of them as quickly as possible. But like the core tracing works, and now we want to add more features for experimentation, for testing, evaluation, and yeah, this is like the basically theme of this launching as well. Yeah, I'm Marc, one of the founders, mostly like doing like front-end engineering and product, talking to most of you. Maybe Clemens, do you want to take it over?
Cool. I'm Clemens, and Max is sitting next to me. So we're actually all in the same office building in Berlin, but we sent Marc to a little call box because he'll do most of the talking, so that you get to have high fidelity sound and he's not disturbed by us. But we're all sitting in the same office building, based out of Berlin. We spent quite a bit of time in San Francisco, so if some of you folks are there, would be lovely to meet you in San Francisco too, or if you happen to be in Berlin, that's great too. I'm Clemens. Max and Marc are the most technical of us two founders, of us three founders. I'm less technical, so I handle all things sales, marketing, sort of running the company side, and trying to keep as much of the sort of more mundane tasks away from Max and Marc, so that they can focus on delivering the amazing software product that we're shipping.
Yeah, thank you, Clemens. Let me take it over. I'm Max, originally business student. I always love to build products and basically to get all the technical details, understand what's going on, and am now responsible for basically building out Langfuse, making the big infrastructural trade-offs, and yeah, thinking about how to build stuff, but also to ship most of the larger features. Yeah, that's about me. Marc?
Yeah.
But let me also, like you just mentioned like the poll feature, so I'll also like sort of give a couple of questions back to you guys. You should see a like poll button pop up, and there's just a couple of questions we were like wondering about. Basically, they're on the right side of the slide here too. Basically, we'd really like to know if you guys are using Langfuse for work or personally, if you're tinkering around, or if this is sort of your full-time job, where you're based in the US, Europe, or somewhere else. And if you are self-hosting Langfuse or if you're using our cloud version. And if you press that little activity button in the bottom right corner, the triangle, yeah, that sort of thing, I think most of you have already figured it out perfect. And yeah, Marc, now back to you.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, we originally started with like this small team of 3, and also on this call, Hasib and Richard and an engineer that will join us first of next month. We currently build like an excellent small engineering team in Berlin. So if you are interested to join or know someone who might be interested, feel free to send them our way, because we just feel like there are like tons of interesting technical challenges to solve with like very cool and interesting users. So really enjoy our time and building this product. Yeah, generally like how we interact, we really like GitHub discussions for now to chat with all of you and try to like dual track GitHub discussions and Discord while engaging with some of you on Slack or via the chat widget and product. But like feel free to reach out anytime if you have something. I feel like most of you have already figured out their favorite way. And yeah, let's have a look at the poll, because I'm like really interested. Okay, work, US, and cloud self-hosting seems to be mixed. Yeah, generally that's also our strategy, because we just wanted to like double check in on that, because we really like open source ourselves personally and want to make it work as a business as well, to be sustainable long term, to really be able to fulfill basically on our product roadmap and vision, and currently plan to basically keep all of the tracing, everything that's important in open source, to then like at the same time commercialize some features in self-hosted and on our managed cloud. So we really want to make both work. And if you ever feel like you have feedback on this, please feel free to reach out. We want to play this as good as we can to build like an amazing product, MIT license, and at the same time somehow making it work financially as well. Bye, Raj. Okay, maybe next. I'd love to show you some. Clemens, can you skip to the next slide? Yeah, generally this is basically what our launch week was about, because we launched last summer with observability and tracing in production and like rough analytics for cost tracking and usage. And now this launch week was all about basically adding the horizontal features and then building out some of the integrations. For example, the Decorator, which is now the preferred integration for Python, as well as the OpenAI JavaScript integration, which is really nice. But then from Playground, evals, and datasets are the other 3 big pillars that we launched or relaunched this week. From Playground, you might have already seen if you're on Langfuse Cloud, and evals and datasets, I'll give you a sneak peek in a second. So generally, this is the whole setup. All of tracing, analytics is all MIT licensed datasets, and we're currently playing basically with how to use from Playground and evals, but for now they're in public beta on Langfuse Cloud, and we want to build like the best product there as well. So this is basically a transition from open source observability for LLM applications to like an LLM engineering platform, because we feel like there's so many common use cases with all the teams we chat and our own problems as well. And they are all really linked to these kind of core traces that we track with the product integrations. Okay, maybe let's jump into a demo of the core product features that we showed this week. I'll take over. And first of all, okay, Arc is. I need to share something to then switch. Perfect. Okay. First of all, was on Sunday, we launched the OpenAI JavaScript integration, because on Python, for example, this integration is extremely popular. And if you use, for example, LiteLLM to proxy any LLM on the OpenAI API spec, basically, then this wrapper is your wrapper to then call any LLM while having like full instrumentation of errors, completion times, prompts and completions, token counts via Langfuse. So this is really nice. Tested with some users already. Shout out to Hasib who built it, and it's a really cool wrapper, and shows basically our commitment as well to JavaScript as well as Python, because we feel most teams start on Python, and then some, if latencies really matter, or if it's more like a chat application, many then transition to JavaScript as they move to production. And we want to basically be part of this all of the way from development to production, no matter whether you use a framework or not, like LangChain or Llama Index. And this is basically our scope of integrations around tracing integrations. And this was basically the missing piece on the JavaScript side, because until then, you need to basically instrument OpenAI calls on JavaScript yourself, which was a bit tedious. So we are very happy to basically finally have this in JavaScript as well. So then on Monday, we were super excited to show our PostHog integration, because before we heard from many of you that you use PostHog for open source prod analytics, and that there are like many things that are like easier to answer if you combine prod analytics with the LLM-related analytics. Because, for example, benchmarking an eval that you create in Langfuse, that you track in Langfuse, it's really helpful to then contrast this eval to, for example, user retention, which you might track in PostHog. This is just the first integration in this regard, but we want to push basically Langfuse metrics to more prod analytics tools, because often these kind of features are really new, and you want to kind of have this one view on how they work. So just to give you an overview in case you haven't used this already, it's, for example, like pushing all trace generation data as well as scores into PostHog to then give like nice charts. I mean, we would love to have self-serve dashboards within Langfuse already by now, but we'll get there at one point. This is a way to get them today on top of Langfuse data, even if you don't want to assemble it with non-Langfuse data. They really like the PostHog dashboards, and we'll invest more into these kind of integrations. And one day, I hope we'll get to self-serve dashboards within Langfuse as well, to have like equally nice charts within the Langfuse dashboard. For now, feel free to ping us anytime if you feel like there's like a chart that would be really useful. We want to add more of these pre-built charts to the Langfuse UI itself. And if you want to try this, you can today. It's in the project settings. You just need to specify your PostHog hostname and the public project API key. Enable it, and this will trigger, for now, a daily sync, and we'll move to like an event-based system with Langfuse version 3 to then like in real time also stream these events to PostHog and other downstream integrations. Cool. Then next day was Playground, which was something in the beginning we felt like we should never launch a Playground, because like the applications most of the teams built using Langfuse are more complicated, which means having a Playground to iterate on a single prompt within a trace is kind of limited useful if the context change isn't respected by the Playground, or if it's really difficult to then iterate on something that reflects production or reflects how the application would work. But since launching prompt management, we got tons of feedback by many of you that domain experts or PMs now use Langfuse to iterate on prompts, and that they want to have like an easy way to see how their idea, how to change a prompt, would kind of affect outcomes. Which means, for example, if we now go to prompt management, take QA answer, no context chat, or maybe let's take with context chat. This is cooler. If we then switch to the Playground, we see the whole chat prompt, including the context variable. If we, for example, say context, which fills it in, Langfuse is open source, could be a good one. And then we ask as a user, is Langfuse open source? Really stupid example. But if we submit, we can basically see the response using the context variable that we inputted, see the whole JSON schema for inputs and outputs, and can switch currently between Anthropic and OpenAI models. This is just the starting. This is like a V0. This is the public beta. Where we want to take this, we see that prompt management is nice because we can pull and push basically from production and staging prompts. New environments for prompts are also coming. So you can test them, push to staging, iterate on them, and push a new version. And generally, this is like the pull push to prompt management. We want to jump here right from tracing. So if you see something that doesn't work in tracing, you can jump to the playground, iterate on it, and then maybe push a release to it via prompt management back to production. And you see the variables here, which are mostly, for example, context or anything else that you usually ingest, like enter into your prompts in your production prompts. We want to combine this with datasets because then it's really simple to store like a reference data set of inputs that you ingest into these variables and like pull from data sets and then run the whole playground against the data set to see how like a prompt change affects the results. Currently, this would basically extend it vertically. We also think about like horizontal, like a grid view. It's like popular among other open source playgrounds. A lot of here is coming. I think the bottom line is many Langfuse features overlap. And in the end, we see how all of them are interconnected. And we really want to build these connections so you can jump from one feature to the other. This is the playground. As Clemens said, while in public beta, this runs on our API keys. So they have daily limits, but go crazy on it until you see like API errors. I would say probably David will try to extort this and use it to just route all of his traffic via Cloudflare to our endpoint, because he asked whether we can standardize on the OpenAI endpoint, so he can put in his own LLM endpoints for the playground. I hope he won't try it the other way around. Then we today, this is probably a feature that many of you are already using. But today we wanted to launch this basically as we feel like it's really like GA. It's really stable. Wait, sorry, I can't share this split view. Give me a second. I'm confused with my own browser. Separate. Okay, perfect. Today we released the Observe Decorator for Python as like more the standard way to integrate on Python, because for now, many of you also use the low-level SDK to manually create like Langfuse.trace, trace.generation, generation.span, whatever, like passing all these Langfuse objects across the whole API, that are the API keys. Yeah, I'll rotate them. No worries. This was the plan. So generally, we like this is now GA. It works to trace basically any Python function, and you can also, if you use our LangChain integration, add basically a Langfuse handler within a decorated function to then have the LangChain piece as part of the whole trace, as well as the OpenAI implementation where you just wrap OpenAI by changing to the import. And in the end, if it's executed in decorated context, this will all end up in a single trace. So if we have a look at it, this was like a rap battle example that we created today for the like release post, where we see we just decorated the outer function, which was called rap battle. It automatically detects arcs and quarks and the output and timings. The span for the like random topic generation for the rap battle, and all the OpenAI calls made via the OpenAI integrations are grouped into this trace, as well as we use a LangChain chain here to summarize the rap battle. And this is also within the same decorated function. We work with some enterprises who build like very complex apps with lots of reuse, where they don't know how it all ends up in a single execution trace. They're just adding add observe to the functions that are kind of interesting for example, retrieval or API calls. Then however your agent or graph basically executes all of this, it will all end up within the same trace, really cutting down basically the integration bloat. That was like our plan with this. And yeah, very happy about all of this. And thanks to especially Liam, in case he's on the call, as he provided tons of feedback on the Decorator chat, his own example. Maybe one small plug for two friends from our YC batch. And coincidentally, by many folks who self-host Langfuse, we got the feedback that they also self-host LiteLLM. So we put up this cookbook where LiteLLM standardizes over 100 models on the OpenAI API schema. So then in the end, you can use this single. So we have this, it's another rap battle. We add observe it, and we just use client, which is our OpenAI wrapper. and then via OpenAI call, for example, model OLlama, Llama 3, or the Mistral model, which in this case runs locally via OLlama, but which means it's basically you write it once and then you can just switch models, and all tracing, everything still works without changing anything else. Like I know many already use this and like it, so I just wanted to give this another shout out because it's like so simple then to integrate with the whole stack and trace any model without really like needing to commit to a model or something. And let's switch to the fourth one, which is basically a preview of tomorrow. We overhauled lots of the datasets related features because datasets was like one of these things which we built in, I think, 2 days initially, somewhere last year. Just like for like an internal use case as well, and then realized, oh, because it has a REST API, we've heard like from tons of people who like build basically their own UIs and Streamlit around them, or some workflows, because it's like handy to go from a trace, if you, for example, got negative user feedback or something, directly add it to a data set, to then in the end fine-tune on it, run evals on it. Some people run it in CI to then do tests against it. So this was kind of like a nice abstraction. But yeah, the feature wasn't really like built out. So over the last weeks, we made some changes to this, added metadata, which is popular, I feel like, across all of the features of Langfuse, because metadata plus like a REST API gives you so much kind of choices to customize and build your own workflows around the core Langfuse feature. So metadata, descriptions on many of these fields, like custom row heights. For example, for this data set, if we go to items, we can now preview the different items, switch to a very nice new editor for JSON. So for example, I don't know, if we copy this, like it basically works like VS Code, and it's very nice. Max found this library, we love it, and basically it has like nice JSON editing across the whole feature set, because many teams like edit within data sets once they copied things from tracing. All of this is also available via the SDKs and the REST API. So this is datasets where especially the runs are much better now, which aggregate scores. And if you go into a single run, like historically, traces in Langfuse didn't have inputs and outputs. That's why dataset runs always need to be linked to basically an observation or to a generation of trace, so like to a child item. We changed this to also be able to link them to traces themselves, to then aggregate the different scores on the dataset run, and to then directly in UI compare, for example, outputs and expected outputs. And we'll add more features here to then, for example, directly rate them, compare different runs side by side. So many datasets related features are planned, but this is basically like the basis where lots of the refactorings happened. And yeah, this is datasets. Especially you want to add some kind of examples to the documentation over the next weeks as well, to like make it easier to run them, for example, in CI for evaluation, because evaluation is now number 5 of the features. Max crunched on it for some time because we wanted to build the most flexible solution for this. So right here, we are in the production demo of the Langfuse Docs Q&A chatbot, in case you know it, where we can now create custom model-based evaluations. So if we add an eval template, we can switch from a library of different templates that we created based on like, we tried many different eval templates that are out there and benchmarked them to get to like good default templates. So if we, for example, now say we want to have like conciseness eval run on new traces that come into Langfuse, you here see the evaluation prompt, and we have basically query generation. We see we have variables here, and in the end, also we use OpenAI tool calling, which allows for like JSON enforcement. So this is basically the scale of the score that's produced by the eval. So here we have provide a score between 0 and 1, and we can also prompt for the reasoning that we want as like an explanation to the score. So for example, if we create a custom eval, like, does this question talk about Langfuse at all? And then the reasoning could be, in what way does it talk about Langfuse and what way does it not talk about Langfuse? Because in the end, maybe the reasoning prompt should be different depending on the eval. You can also configure the different model prompts or pick from different models. For this feature, we don't sponsor the API key because we know that many of you run thousands of evals basically every hour on all of the production traces. So you can provide your own API key within the project settings. Okay, let's add this eval. So we created the conciseness eval. If we now switch to the config, we see we can create a new eval config for conciseness, which pulls in the eval template. We can now filter traces that are coming into Langfuse because it will run on all future traces that match this filter. To, for example, only include a specific tag. If you want to, for example, only run this on dataset runs, or only run this on a specific feature if you use, for example, trace names to differentiate between different features of traces that you pipe into Langfuse. So you can apply a filter, because otherwise maybe evaluating traces that don't make sense to be evaluated this way might be very costly or not really helpful. But for now, let's just run on all. And here you see how we map then variables from the prompt template. So for example, we have query and generation in the prompt template, where you can then, for example, say, let's map the trace query to the trace input, because we know that we always have the user message in the trace input, and then generation we have in the trace output. We create, this is like a public beta, so we'll add more UI to this to make this more easy to understand what's really happening here. But like as we have this whole trace within Langfuse, we want to make it easy to evaluate in the trace context. So you could, for example, also specify here that you want to have the summarization generation and pull the output from the summarization generation into this eval prompt to then, for example, evaluate whether the output generation only mentions facts that were in the output of the reg retrieval step, to enable these kind of workflows. And we'll build like nice UI here. We have some sketches for this. This is really rough, but I hope with this explanation, it kind of makes sense. So let's take trace output. You can sample, because otherwise, again, it can be really costly if you have lots of traces, and a delay, because you know best when your trace will be finished. So basically from the creation timestamp of a trace, we'll wait for these many seconds until we run the eval against the trace. So if you know it usually finalizes within 60 seconds, just add like a 60-second delay. Okay, let's save this. So now we have a conciseness eval, which is active. So let's try this by using our demo. And let's say, when is the Langfuse Town Hall? Obviously, there's like no context on this in our public documentation, I guess. So, okay, it points us to the official social media channels, which is probably a good thing, but completely hallucinated. So let's switch to traces to have a look at this. So we now see that the trace came in. When is the Langfuse Town Hall with the final result and the different evals that we computed. So we have the conciseness eval that we just created, where the conciseness eval states the generation does not directly answer the question about the Langfuse Town Hall, but instead suggests checking the website or social media for information, which is not concise. So you see how it works. Basically, you define what you want to evaluate, then you define what you want to pull from the trace to evaluate it, and then you get basically a score value for the for this evaluation, and you can then filter all traces by this score. So if we take score, for example, helpfulness, because this was the previous one that Max added, and then select, for example, helpfulness less than 1, then we get all the traces where the eval was kind of like negative about its what was it saying? Conciseness, helpfulness. Same also for the dashboard, where you see how these distribute over a period of time, and as well you see them like aggregated over time. If you then, for example, run evals on traces that you do via dataset run, these same traces then would populate basically the dataset run scores that I've shown you in the demo before. Cool. This was a lot of talking from my side, but this was all that we shipped over the last days. And currently the Playground and evals are in public beta on Langfuse Cloud, because we really want to get them to a very nice and stable level, because we know once we release in basically MIT licensed open source, we want to commit to the interface not changing much, as we know that many rely on it in ways that we can't expect, and we don't know how the API is basically used, and we don't want to break things as we make rapid changes while being in public beta, but expect like a more public release or the kind of GA release of this really soon, because we currently try and test this with a couple of dozen teams. And are like happy for now on the progress, besides some kind of UI changes that we still want to make. Cool. I think this was it for the demo part of the town hall. Let's maybe switch to something more interactive. And I think we have some notes on Langfuse v3 that we might want to cover quickly, and then we can jump over to just chat together.
Yes, and you can start adding questions to the Q&A queue if you want. So yeah, through the like activities and then Q&A button, you can already collect those questions.
Sure. Okay. Concerning like Langfuse 3, I think we will do quite some work on basically for example OLAP databases. So we will run into scaling problems. So we will need to upgrade our Postgres database to something more powerful. Also, async workflows. I think the model-based evals is the first async workflow that we started out with. But there's tons of things that we are excited about, like doing more integrations like PostHog, or sending you alerts into your Slack channel when some customer spent more money than he or she was supposed to. So all of these features support a new infrastructure, or basically this new infrastructure that we just built out. And this will be a bigger release also for open source that's coming up next. Apart from that, for the product, I think we will be excited to drill down into each of the products that we just showed you and add features to them, and also integrate them more and more into each other. So basically the prompt playground, for example, that we connect that to the tracing and not only the prompt management. So we will basically add more connections between all of them and add tons of depth to all these features. Do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I can take over just very briefly before we move on, because the question comes up sometimes. We are an open source project, and up until now, basically everything we have worked on over the past year is MIT licensed. And we wanted to just like share a bit of color, because we are a company and we are, funded by sort of venture capital money. So we think it's helpful to be transparent about also where the project's going to go commercially. And in general, everything we talked about today and sort of everything that we're doing, especially with regards to open source and our commercial license and strategy, but also product roadmap, you can find in our documentation. So that's always a great starting point to go to the open source page, to the roadmap, to GitHub discussions to figure out what's going on. But yeah, at the core, we are an open core project. So the core of Langfuse will always be open source, MIT licensed. And it's very important to know that everything that's out there already, we will maintain into the future under an MIT license. And what is the very core of Langfuse? The very core of Langfuse is tracing, collecting data, getting LLM data into Langfuse and getting it back out again. And that's basically the promise that we will make to each and every one of you, and basically to the community of Langfuse, that this core of tracing integrations, SDK and integrations into other popular LLM frameworks and your data, like access to your data via a GET and a POST API, we will always maintain that under an MIT very permissive license. With regards to new features we add, we will be very transparent if and when we decide to add these under a commercial license. So it's not impossible that we will do this. And basically, there's two ways we're going to monetize the project. There's Langfuse Cloud, and I know that some of you on the call are already paying customers on Langfuse Cloud, and thank you very much for being that. That's the main channel we will use for monetization. And the second channel we are considering is mostly charging enterprises to use certain features for self-hosting. And then these features that are not part of the sort of core tracing workflows might come under a commercial license in the future, but this does not concern anything that's out there under open source at this point. Yeah, I think we can move over to Q&A, and also very, very happy to answer any questions about open source and commercial strategy there. Marc, do you want to start taking the question?
Cool. I can maybe read and route a bit. So let's sort by, oh, interesting. We were like kind of impressed by how good Google Meet has become over the last weeks and months during COVID, like with all of these features that we only knew from Zoom. So maybe we can start with the top one, will evaluation likely eventually support using OpenAI's new batch API for cost savings? Totally yes, because we know that like evals are the most costly thing that you can do, and currently model-based evals are basically, I would say, a catch-all way of running evals, where, for example, estimating toxicity is kind of stupid to do it via an LLM, but it's kind of like a nice way to support all kinds of evals at once. And like cost reductions are super key. The batch API looks really interesting. Played around with it quickly, and yeah, this is like roadmap stuff. This makes a lot of sense to do. Let's get the basics right of this feature and improve some of the UI, and then dive into these cost reductions. That makes tons of sense. Then we have the second one. For custom eval, any plans to support webhooks to have my own computation of evaluations? Maybe quickly, because Max, we chatted about it. We thought about like adding webhooks generally to many fields of the product, where if we just provide a payload, so for example, a new trace has come in with a filter and notify a webhook of yours and provide the trace ID, then it's super easy to, for example, build a workflow on Modal or any tool that you use to host your webhooks, to then run, for example, a custom eval via our Python SDK, and then push back the score via the SDK again. So yes, we feel basically webhooks could be a great way to extend many of the features. With one team I chatted about, we could, for example, build whenever a new prompt is created, that webhook is triggered, because then they want to run the whole application in GitHub Actions to do like a dataset run on each prompt iteration. So if someone who's less technical on the team iterates on a prompt, that they then see this as a dataset run come in like a minute later, and this is all like then via webhook. Yes, we feel webhooks are great because currently the extendability of Langfuse comes via the Get API, and webhooks are a way to then do something in Langfuse and have something else happen and feedback. Maybe Max, will the Langfuse Playground likely allow us to use our own LiteLLM proxy in the future?
Our LiteLLM proxy, so currently the playground is basically living in our backend, written in TypeScript, and LiteLLM is in Python. So currently this is not really a plan, I would say.
Max, I think David's comment is referring to the LiteLLM proxy. So basically, what we built to call OpenAI from the playground, we could just direct it to the proxy.
Oh, yeah.
I think we're currently using OpenAI, LangChain JS, to interact with different models within the playground. We should probably check whether like LangChain JS OpenAI works well with different model providers via LiteLLM proxy. But I think this is a great idea, because we felt that supporting different models isn't that easy on JS, and the whole project runs on JS. And for example, LangChain JS doesn't support as many models as, for example, on Python. So maybe just running LiteLLM proxy ourselves could be like a nice escape hatch to not having to integrate with everything within the playground. David, to be honest, the playground is like a V0. We really want to extend this to more models. We'll probably extend it first to the models that are supported by LangChain JS, and then the LiteLLM proxy could be like a great way to extend it even further. Maybe you can also just do it when we support, for example, OpenAI via Azure, which we'll probably add to the playground to support custom model endpoints. Once there's like a custom model endpoint, you can probably just have like a lookup of model endpoint to model name or something. Maybe there's like a smart way to do this. We should probably think about this. I think Google Meet saves this as an Excel sheet, so we can add this to our GitHub discussions board. Next one up, Bushid asking, do you envision adding eval definitions which are not tightly coupled with LLMs, for example, evaluating if actual output is within cosine distance of expected output, or if it's valid JSON? Happy to chat more about it offline.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I think the evals right now using LLMs to evaluate is basically the escape hatch for just a lot. Adding more features around that, like cosine similarities, but also searching for a certain string in a response or something like that. It's definitely something we want to add, and with the new infrastructure, something that we can ship on rather quick.
Yeah, I think we did like a lot of research together with like one data scientist on the team who like compared tons of different eval metrics, and we just feel like there's so many different out there for different kinds of application types, where model-based eval and just being able to bring your own eval template is a good starting point to just get things done. But for example, is this valid JSON? Is this valid SQL? How do the strings compare? Like there are some very nice evals, or does this contain like an HTTP URL? So yeah, we'll add more of these because they are now easy to add as all of the infra is basically there. David again, I like the idea of prompt management, but the lack of a mature version control system concerns me. Has there been any thought if prompt management could be done somehow integrated or backed with a version control system like Git? Yes, we heard about this in like funnily with a data science company which runs on like DBT and tried to model a Git workflow in UI. And they've worked for years on this to get this right. So we felt like the V0 of prompt management shouldn't be based on Git, because most of the users that we talked to that really wanted this basically want to move prompts out of Git, because the people who should iterate on prompts don't understand Git. So that's why we got started with like this workflow, which is rather simple and just increments. We'll at now currently working on this, and we'll ship this probably somewhere later this week or next week, like different labels for different production targets. So you could, for example, employ some kind of like semantic versioning strategy of having labeled versions and then like push like a version 2 label to a new one, or have major, minor version numbers. But like branching, probably we'll go for, you can just duplicate a trace. And wait, I'll just mute this room. And just duplicate to a new version, to then experiment a new prompt name, and then merge back in. But yeah, if you have good ideas, David, about like how to make a nice Git workflow work in UI, or have like good reference points from other software, we'd be very interested how this looks like, because we draw some things up and it all was kind of like bad, I'd say. Oh, GitHub Gist. Thanks. We'll have another look. That's a good idea, because yeah, the UI there is kind of clean compared to the things we looked at. Then Matt, will the HTTP API continue to be exposed? We are looking to use Langfuse in additional languages that we run on. Hell yes, 100%, because in the end, we feel like Langfuse is like, it's kind of a suite right now, but all of the features should be able to be used independently. And also we don't want to lock you in to the Langfuse UI. So yes, the HTTP API will continue to be exposed, and it's rather will continue to improve, because sometimes, for example, with prompt management, we launch with a very like basic API where you, for example, don't have like a get endpoint to get a list of all prompts or versions. This will change. So whenever you feel like an API is missing or lacking, please add to the GitHub issues, and we'll try to improve the API, because we feel like having a modular Langfuse to then sometimes use the UI and sometimes build your own workflow is really essential. And then webhooks will be the last basically component to this. By Alan, is there a plan to add creating a new project via API? Yes, this is a popular request. We are super sorry that we move slow on this, because currently we thought about many different ways to solve it. None of this is like really nice. Right now, Langfuse is multi-tenant first. So we thought about basically adding like an admin API key via an environment variable if you self-host, to then be able to administer the whole instance via API. This could be one solution. And the other is rather that we add basically organizations into Langfuse. So you manage basically RBAC and API keys on an organization level, and then projects are just like children of this organization, and they can all be used with the same API key. Probably we'll launch organizations anyway, because we feel like if you have multiple environments or applications, role-based access control gets very messy in Langfuse right now, because you need to configure it for every project. So currently it feels like we'll launch organizations, and then you have organization-level API keys, and then you can add to an organization via API. And we'll figure something out to make this work for self-hosting as well, because we want to make it easy to like spin up Langfuse in a cluster, like for example in Docker Compose, if you build your own software around Langfuse, for example, and want to use it kind of like headless, then this should be able, like we want to like enable this. Currently it's like you need to migrate the database yourself to add this project, or run our like CEDA that we use for like development purposes. It's a bit messy. Like we first introduce organizations, and then figure out a way to make this easy if you run it on your own infrastructure, to like provision an organization, provision API keys without having to open the UI, because like opening the UI for this is kind of bad as well. Okay, Bushit. Do datasets allow uploading query and expect output via CSV? I would say like technically yes, but no. You can just run it in a notebook and basically via the Python SDK upload a CSV file. Yes, we want to add CSV upload to the UI as well. Right now, you need to do this via the Python SDK. David again, is there a plan to add a comparison view in the Langfuse Playground, similar to OpenAI's new compare feature on the web dev portal or Open Router? So you can run the same prompt across multiple LLMs and see the output step by step. Yes, this was like basically on the prompt playground. We want to grow it horizontally to compare different models or prompts, and then vertically to compare different sets of input variables. Yes, that's the plan for this feature. All of this is basically, we want to paint the vision of where we want to take the project. By no means, this is no timeline, because we want to currently push for infrastructure changes, and we push for like the high ROI features where we know that we unblock many of your workflows. This is the roadmap from Playground, and probably need like a weekend hack to just get it there. So whenever we have the time and energy, we'll ship this. Raymond, you mentioned switching to an OLAP database. Are you talking about ClickHouse or something else? Max?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, so this is ClickHouse is high on the list, but we will also look into others. So basically, we know what our requirements are, and we need to choose the right tools to basically make these requirements work. But ClickHouse is definitely one of these tools that we will look into.
Yeah. Maybe quick +1 on this. The two main requirements are storing large inputs and outputs, especially for multi-model like vision or like audio traces. So probably maybe offloading to S3 or some kind of like storage. Yes, David, S3 for large could be a solution. We currently want to figure this out because we know like migrating will be a lot of effort, and we want to get this right the first time with V3 to then have something that scales well and supports all of the features that we want to build in the future. But yeah, we all need something for large data storage, and then on the other hand, we need something for the queries, especially for the dashboard to power the analytical queries quickly. So ClickHouse seems to be a natural fit, especially as it also supports S3 for data storage, but we don't know yet. We'll include like a migration path for version 3 and some docs, so this should be easy. Alexander, do you have plans to post to move the PostHog integration to self-hosting as well? Do you consider integrations with other providers like AppDynamics or Sumo Logic? As Max said, currently the PostHog integration runs on like I'd say alpha level V3 infra of like some async worker. So currently, like all of this will be brought into self-hosting and into basically the stack that runs Langfuse in prod with version 3. Right now, it's very difficult for us to bring this into self-hosting in version 2 because we currently have this one application container that serves the front end, that serves the synchronous API, but where it's like narrowed, like we use Next.js for all of this, which was super great to have like one container in the beginning, but it makes it really difficult to run async background tasks in the same container without like butchering all permissions that make it safe. So we want to bring this to the self-hosting setup in version 3, which will allow us to run the async work in the background, and then adding basically other downstream integrations will be super easy because it's just like an ETL script basically, which pulls all the new data and then like transforms it into events and sends them. So I think we'll get to an abstraction where either we can add this very easily, or where we have an interface for you where you can easily contribute, add this to your own self-hosted instance. Bushit, would love to see cost tracking for eval if it's not already supported. Currently, eval has no cost tracking, as far as I know, because it's like a V0. But yes, we want to do token count tracking, latency tracking, error rate tracking, because we know it's super crucial. And also looking into, for example, like giving an estimate based on the token counts. Like there's many ideas we have, because especially right now, you can run evals on all future traces. Like V0.5, the next iteration will be able to run evals on like past historical traces, where if you then run it on, I don't know, 1 million traces and let the worker run for a day, you can like run through all of your OpenAI credits or budget or limits. So probably, yeah, we need tracking limits and making it easy to digest what's really happening with evals, because this can be really costly. For the like eval pieces, this kind of applying it to historical data feels for us like the most natural thing, because most teams we talk to in our own experimentations as well, like we don't know what a good eval is for like a given data set. So usually the best workflow is to collect user feedback or some kind of like ground truth in production, or just label it yourself. By the way, more labeling in the UI will come as well, because we are very excited about it. So like labeling in the UI to then understand which traces work and which don't, and then be able to run model-based evals on historical data to then just see how they correlate with basically your ground truth eval to understand what's like a reliable eval for production. Because once you run it in production, it's super costly. So you want to know that it actually has some kind of meaning for you. Okay, David, is there a plan to have automated data retention policies in the open source version? I realized today that my dev Langfuse project has hundreds of pages of prompts already, and I wish I could auto-delete old ones after a few days. David, are you talking about prompts or about traces? Because for now, we didn't think about like auto-deleting. Oh, traces. Yeah, we don't want to auto-delete prompts, because otherwise maybe like production application crashes. Yes, currently we run, like as said, with version 2, it's very difficult to make it work in the main application container. So for some enterprise customers today on Langfuse Cloud, we run these kind of data retention cleanup tasks ourselves. And we want to add this to the worker in version 3 to do custom data retention on the traces, either for cost management, to just not have like the database explode because you might not need it on a dev project, or on the other hand, also for compliance requirements, because we know that many, especially larger companies that self-host Langfuse, also run custom data retention management scripts to then clean up the Postgres database. And maybe just a quick disclaimer, while all of our public API and SDKs, we have this under semantic versioning. So if something breaks, we just want to do it in major versions. If it ever happens in minors, please excuse us. We are trying our best to cover everything in tests, and let us know quickly and we try to fix it. But the database schema will never be under semantic versioning. So also in patch versions, we might change the database schema. So if you build something downstream on top of the database, this is kind of risky. But probably this applies to like all software that you self-host. So if you do this, this is kind of risky, and data retention will be possible via the main application, probably in version 3. Bushit, when designing the event-based PostHog integration, are there any plans to do it in OpenTelemetry format to allow integrating with other frameworks? Bushit, maybe you can clarify. Do you mean basically transforming Langfuse events into like an open telemetry compatible format to then just push it to like an OTel collector?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I meant, Mark.
Interesting. When we talked about OpenTelemetry, we talked we like how, for example, Microsoft and Traceloop are pushing for semantic conventions for LLM-related traces in OTel. We were more thinking about basically building a collector to then, if you use OTel to instrument your application anyways for your traces, and then add basically instrumentation for LLM calls, that you then collect it in Langfuse, because we feel like most of the workflows that you do around LLM-related features are better in a tool like Langfuse than, for example, in Datadog or other OTel. I don't even know if Datadog is compliant with OTel. Signos is great, I know. So in the end, we rather thought about it as a collector, but as the like implementation for the PostHog integration is more like, oh, you get a new event, and this is how you transform it to then send it somewhere. It should be very easy to just take the interface of this producer of the event and implement basically something that sends something to your OTel collector if you want to collect it again in your main observability workflow. So yes, this is a great idea as well. For now, we just thought about product analytics because we thought we want to consume these events, but I think sending them is really interesting as well. And finally, Pooja, I hope I don't butcher your name. Is there a way to create dashboard level metrics for trace scores? Dashboard level metrics. Can you clarify? I think we display scores for traces in a pivot table as well as in like a time series chart on the dashboard. What are you missing? Like, what do you want to see?
I think we're like looking for confusion matrix and so on. Different types of, for us to be able to create our own charts depending on what we're scoring, because we are creating custom scoring functions.
Yeah, that's what I tried to allude to once when showing the PostHog thingy. We really want to build self-serve dashboards within Langfuse. This will take a little bit of time. Confusion matrices is like the easier answer, because as we build out like running evals on historical data as well as in Langfuse, like being able to plot them nicely to understand how they correlate is super important. So we want to basically build UI for this in the dashboard. This is high up on our list for the dashboard. No timeline right now. If you have something you can show me, or to give us some kind of understanding, or what you want to achieve there, happy to talk offline to understand more about the use case and maybe prioritize it more.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I'm going to be working on that next week, so I think I'll reach out to you.
Cool. Max, Clemens, do you have anything else?
I think you successfully made it through. Not bad, and just in time.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I was practicing this kind of launch week with all of the videos that we recorded. So and I just saw there like tons of questions. Maybe just like unmute yourself. How do you kind of like the format? Shall we do this like more often, or is like async via GitHub discussions, or via just the Discord channel? Like, what works for you best to basically chat about the project?
I think
Yeah,
in
I
general,
personally found this to be extremely useful. Thank you for doing this, because it's, instead of being async, for like having a town hall gives you a perspective of where the product is going and have real-time feedback. So also seeing all of you is also great. So I think it's nice to do town halls for like bigger milestones, maybe once a quarter or something. Yeah.
Cool.
perfect. And I think for us, it's like an open question to figure out. Right now, there's many ways to contact us, right? Like through the chat on the website, where a lot of people come in, Discord, GitHub, email, Slack, like where we're connected with people on all kinds of channels. And to be honest, sometimes it's getting a bit it's getting a bit much, because the project's growing and there's a lot of requests coming in. So we're thinking about where to channel support, requests, communications. So if there's like any platform you guys prefer over the other, like let us know. But yeah, agree. Town hall seems like a pretty cool format. We will do it again.
Like, we currently have the feeling that GitHub discussions is really nice, because we can create issues from a discussion thread and then follow up with everyone, see upvotes, prioritize. Unfortunately, the GraphQL API is a bit limited, because we would love to render them then in the UI to show like, oh, these are the requests that relate to this feature, to then use this as our like feature request and bug reporting database. Weren't able to do this with the GraphQL API. I hope they improve it. But has anyone kind of like some kind of like con arguments against GitHub discussions? We'd love to hear them, because we want to double down on this. And if the API isn't perfect, we might be stuck with the data in there. So better switch now if it's not a good idea. Yeah, other than that, I think this is it, right?
Yeah, that's it. And thank you so much for sticking around. We've got 1 hour done now. So thank you so much, guys. Just 2-3 like very small end notes. As said, as Marc said at the beginning, we are hiring in Berlin. So if you know any like strong, talented engineers or DevRels, tell them about us. Tell them to reach out to one of us. We're happy to speak with people you think are well suited. And then last thing, for showing up, we want to send you guys stickers. We printed some really cool ones. Send you a little postcard and stickers. Head to langfuse.com/stickers. Drop us your address and you'll receive a little letter from us.
Yeah, I think we need to basically make this work to like a Series A, to then do like I don't know, what do the kind of like super bases do during launch week, like Apple AirPods Max or something? For now it's stickers.
Okay, thank you so much for showing up, everyone, and have a great lunchtime, evening, wherever you are. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Until next time.